Hello and welcome back. I hope all are you doing well and taking proper care of yourself. So today in this video we are going to discuss models and approaches to public policy. After watching this video you will be familiar with models and approaches of public policy, that is institutional approach, group theory, elite theory, and rational model. This is the part 1 of this topic. Remaining models and approaches will discuss in another part. So, over the years, political scientists have developed a number of models and approaches to help us understand political life. The purpose of such exercise, according to Thomas R. Dye, is to simplify and clarify our thinking about government and politics, to identify important political forces in society, to communicate relevant knowledge about political life, to direct inquiry into politics, and to suggest explanations for political events and outcomes. The theoretical approaches that will come under brief examination here include system theory, elite theory, group theory, rational decision making theory, incrementalism, game theory, and institutionalism. These models represent different ways of looking at public policy. These are, of course, not mutually exclusive. Each has a distinct focus and each suggests specific things about political life and policy. Based on Thomas R. Dye's classification, following is a brief description of each model. So let's begin with the institutional approach. Traditionally, this approach has been the basic analytical tool for studying the political activities of the government in political science. According to this view, public policies have their origin in governmental institutions such as legislatures, executives, courts, and political parties. A policy becomes a public policy only when it is authoritatively determined by the government institutions. Government gives legitimacy and universalistic character to a policy. Public policy is authoritatively determined, implemented, and enforced by government institutions. Thus, the relationship between public policy and government institutions is very close. Institutional approach is criticized for ignoring the living linkages between institutions and public policy. With the onrush of the behavioral revolutions in political science, institutional studies of the policy process were swept aside in favor of studies that relied more on the group, system, and elite mass models. So this is the institutional approach to public policy. In this approach, the basic analytical tool for studying the political activities of the government in political science. Public policies have their origin in governmental institutions such as legislatures, executives, courts, and political parties. This approach is criticized for ignoring the living linkages between institutions and public policy. Then next is group theory. Group theory believes that group interest and attitude are influential factors in determining public policies. Public policy is the product of group struggle. As Earl Latham states, may be called public policy is the equilibrium reached in this group, struggling at any given moment, and it represents a balance which the contending factions or groups constantly strive to weight in their favor. As different interest groups struggle among themselves to influence public policy, actual policy making in the government tends to tilt toward the groups that are gaining in influence. By contrast, public policy moves away from the demands of the losing groups. Thus, public policy at any given time will reflect the interest of the dominant groups. However, the weakness of this theory is that it overstates the importance of groups and understates the independent and creative role that public officials play in the policy process. It is also misleading and inefficient in explaining politics or policy formulation in terms of a group struggle without giving attention to other factors like ideas and institutions. So, this is the group theory. Basically, group interest and attitude are influential factor in determining public policies. Its weakness is overstate the importance of groups and understate the independent and creative role that public officials play in the policy process. Then next, elite theory. This theory views public policy as the preferences and values of the governing elite. It believes that people are passive, apathetic, and ill-informed about public policy. Initiative for public policy does not come from masses. The elite actually shape mass opinion into a public policy, into a policy question. Thus, public policy really turns out to be the preferences of elites. Public officials and administrators merely carry out the policies decided by the elite. In this model, policies flow downward from elites to masses. They do not arise from mass demands. The elite theory has close resemblance with the group theory, as both refer to policy generation through pressures from specific interest in the society. Group theory, however, is basically pluralistic, whereas elite theory is essentially monistic. So this is the elite theory, that is preferences and values of the governing elite. Close resemblance with the group theory. Group theory basically pluralistic, whereas elite theory is essentially monistic. Then now understand the rational model. What is rational model to the public policy? So this model emphasizes that policy making is a choice among policy alternatives on rational grounds. Herbert Simon, Yehizekiel Dror, and Thomas R. Dye are the main protagonists of this model. Robert Havemann observed that a rational policy is one that is correctly designed to maximize net value achievement. As an intellectual endeavor, rationalism tries to learn all the preferences existing in a society, assign each value a relative weight, discover all policy alternatives available, know all consequences of each alternative, calculate how the selection of any policy will affect the remaining alternatives in terms of opportunities, cost, and ultimately select that policy alternative which is the most efficient in terms of the cost and benefits of social values. Thomas R. Dye equates rationality with efficiency. He says that a policy is rational when it is most efficient, that is, if the ratio between the value it achieves and the value it sacrifices is positive and higher than any other policy alternatives. Much of the rationalist paradigm deals with the construction of public policies that assure better public policies. Yehizekiel Dror calls this concern meta-policy or policy for policy-making procedures. In a rational model, Policy has to look logical and factual. Thus, Herbert Simon's rational model of decision making separated facts from values and brought into policy making. New scientific techniques like computer and mathematical modeling. Rationality, according to Herbert Simon, is concerned with the selection of preferred behavior alternatives in terms of some system of values whereby the consequences of behavior can be evaluated. According to him, three kinds of activities are involved in a rational policy making process, that is, intelligence activity, design activity, and choice activity. Herbert Simon recognized efficiency as the primary objective of administration and also the limits of individuals and organizations to behave in complete rationality. The concept he developed to describe a rationality which is limited but not irrational is bounded rationality. There are many barriers to rational policy making. There are no uniform societal values. We have only the values of specific groups and individuals which are conflicting. The environment of policymakers renders it impossible to see many societal values due to the cost of information gathering, the availability of the information, and the time involved in the collection are barriers in collecting all the information required to know all possible policy alternatives and the consequences of each alternative. Policymakers have personal needs, inhibitions, and inadequacies which prevent them from performing in a highly rational manner. So, that is why even a rational policy scientist, Ezekiel Dror, wants a policy analyst to broaden their use of extra rational information, including intuition and exceptional leadership with acute perception of social reality. So, this is the rational model to the public policy. In this model, policy making is a choice among policy alternatives on rational grounds. Herbert Simon, Ezekiel Dror, and Thomas R. Dye says equates rationality with efficiency. Ezekiel says meta policy or policy for policy making procedures, and Herbert Simon says rational model of decision making separated facts from values. Then, concerned with the selection of preferred behavior alternatives, the consequences of behavior can be evaluated. Three kinds of activities involved in the rational policy making process, which are intelligence activity, design activity, and choice activity. Develop a rationality which is limited but not irrational is bounded rationality. Policymakers have personal needs, inhibitions, and inadequacies which prevent them from performing in a highly rational manner. So that is why even a rational policy scientist Ezekiel Dror wants to a policy analyst to broaden their use of extra rational information, including intuition and exceptional leadership with the acute perception of social reality. So we continue in second part. So that's all for today. I hope you find this video informative and helpful. Let's meet in the next video. Then if you gain something from this video, then please like and share the video, and also subscribe our YouTube channel Padhai with Guru Chela via pressing the notification bell icon. So thank you for watching this video. Stay home, stay safe, stay indoors.